To clarify some things for tomorrow, when you come in, paper, prompt will be sitting, on the desk, table, whatever. Pick them up when you get here. So if you get here a couple minutes before the bell rings, you got yourself an extra couple minutes. If you come walking in like death with no emotion, you'll be able to lose a couple minutes, and good luck.
Hey, what do you say
So-
on some Christmas music? Get all jolly.
Might not work for everybody.
That's all I'm doing.
So once you come in, you can begin right away. If you have your book with you, that's wonderful. I will even take it off your hands. You can wrap it as a white elephant gift, but you need to get it back before the end of the year. But you can bring in. I'm doing animal imagery. I'm getting you ready for your TWA.
What is
You can bring in your book. I'll sign it back in for you. But remember, you're not using book for the TWA itself, so it's not going to be the security blanket of okay, you can flip through the pages, because that'll probably end up being more of a time waster than anything else. You're also not going to come in with any like handwritten notes that you can use. So if you do have sticky tabs that you got to take out of all the pages, they can be in one big pile. But then I'll come and confiscate that pile, throw it away into the recycling bin and all that stuff. So you're using what you have up here. That's going to be your resource to use. The prompt itself you can write on, certainly. I mean, you're going to be filling it on line paper. I would suggest doing some pre-writing brainstorming. Yes, it's going to take time, but if you take 6, 7, 8 minutes, I think you got a better chance of writing a clear, focused, well-supported essay in 32 minutes if you know what you're going to write about, as opposed to sitting there for 40 minutes and trying to figure it out as you go along. So I would suggest taking some time. 15 minutes is probably going to be too long, certainly 20 minutes, but I would at least take a little bit of time, think about the prompt, look at it. This sounds silly, but don't fight the prompt. Don't try to turn it into something that it's not. Don't make it a synthesis. Don't make it a DRQ. It's going to be a rhetorical analysis. You'll have a general argument provided for you. Your job is to come up with what are the devices that kind of link that argument to specific scenes within the course of the book. Even though you're not using your book, I think you can still come up with specific scenes, characters. So your whole litany of rhetorical devices is still out there for you. I think I mentioned to you yesterday, if there is a device that might be a little tougher to do without using specific quotes, it probably would be diction. There still might be some words that you think of that would be appropriate, but that's probably one that I doubt would get utilized nearly as much as some others. What's everyone's main question or concern as you're going to come filing into the room tomorrow? I think that fear will kind of go away as we start going over some stuff, because you still know specific things about the book, when it comes to events and things like that. But what's kind of like the obvious concern that folks, it's rhetorical analysis, it's about one flew over the cuckoo's nest, you don't know what the prompt is. So, how can I prepare, how can I study, besides the easy answer of JT, reread the book tonight, you have 2 hours to go. Certainly you could take that route, and there might be some specific parts that you need to reread. But what I do have for you that could certainly maybe help you a little bit is I'm going to give you some themes to take a look at. So if you investigate these themes, I think it puts you in a pretty good position that you can probably do well. I'm going to give you 5. So the whole idea about power and control, and then I'd give yourself a little bit of space. Treatment of the insane. I put treatment in quotation marks. Probably could do the same thing there with insane. Along that vein, kind of like the question of sanity or insanity. Alienation. Kind of like social pressures with that. And then the whole question about human dignity. And I'll show you all 5 again if you're missing it. So, power, control. This is the eye test in the back. Amanda's going to cover her left eye and read it for us. treatment of the insane, question of insanity, alienation, social pressures, human dignity. All right, so those are the 5. Certainly you would not cover all 5 in one essay. And you might not even see that word or phrase show up in your prompt, because I haven't really decided what your prompt is yet. But those 5 concepts would certainly provide you with enough ideas, content, that you would then therefore be able to relate it into whatever prompt you get. And certainly there's going to be some carryover among those. You know, part of alienation and social pressures could deal with human dignity, which could also deal with power and control. So there certainly can be some overlap. So as you start to kind of go into a little bit more detail and ideas about one of these, I bet you'll see some ways in which it can kind of carry over into some of the others. Of those 5, are there any that you look at and go, yeah, don't give me that one? Because then I know which one to give you. And now we play mind tricks, because Andy will say, I don't want to do that one, but that means he really wants to do that one, so he's hoping that I really have him do that one. But then we can't do that one.
I would have problems coming up with alienation.
Alienation? Okay. Do, that was right here, yeah. For alienation, social pressures, like I think conformity could kind of even go into that idea a little bit. Are you okay coming up with, don't worry about rhetorical devices, are you okay coming up with examples or scenes where you do see social pressures, alienation, conformity, isolation, those kinds of things taking shape? Okay. From a brainstorming standpoint then, because this is going to be the mindset, the steps, the process that you're going to go through tomorrow, you're going to get the argument thematically, given to you. The first thing, before jumping into devices, I would start to try to come up with a quick little list of when does this component, this theme, this idea present itself within the course of the book. Go through those scenes first. This might be happening mentally, you might be writing this down on a piece of paper. Once you have those scenes in mind, then, all right, what things start to link those together from a rhetorical device standpoint? So focusing on the first part, who are characters or scenes, events, where the idea of alienation, social pressures, conformity, isolation starts to present itself within the book. So don't worry about giving a device, but what would be like specific scenes? Because this would also go to your concern about, I can't quote from the book, but I need to still come up with specific examples. So where do you see alienation among other things happening?
You can talk about sort of kind of changes the wall.
Okay.
Talk about that.
Why him?
He was definitely isolated.
Can't go anywhere, can't do anything. Okay. So you have specific patients. Alice certainly being one of those. There might be some other ones that you come up with.
Is it talking like alienating others or alienating yourself? Characters getting rid of.
To be honest, we don't know yet because we don't have a prompt. I would say, and not that this is going to make you happy, probably a little bit of both. If you are alienated, and I think we were mentioning this back when we did the Capture on the Rye, because that was certainly a concern that was happening. If you are alienated, I would say you are being pushed to the side somehow, pushed away. I would probably agree that if a person feels alienated, some more self-isolation, exile might come as a result of it, so you even make yourself further and further away. But if you are truly going to be alienated, someone is going to kind of be an instigator and kind of push away. So both, but I think you still need to have that antagonistic force, oppressive force that's going to kind of initiate it.
Would social pressures or implications, like trying to make up things about each other to get that extra time in the meeting?
Sure, yeah, I would think so. Like the whole pecking party thing that takes place. Yep. There's the pecking party, and then where does all that information go into?
Group therapy sessions.
There's the group therapy sessions, and then there's also like a physical object. or that log book where all the stuff gets documented. So it's not just he said, she said, well, he said, but we got it down on paper. You know, you're going to say different things about different people. But yeah, log book, and even you mentioning just in general the whole therapy sessions. And again, I'm not worried about devices. We're just coming up with examples. Anything else? Where you see alienation, isolation? Remember, it's chief, not the chef. Go to writing tomorrow. We don't want to do that. You said chief in the fog?
Yeah.
Okay. And, you know, Cody, going back to your initial question, well, is it like self-imposed or you're pushed away? He is certainly pushed away, and then by him being pushed away, I think he does kind of enter the fog a little bit more on his own and feels some safety and security within it, because then, you know, people aren't going to see him and he's not going to get nervous. What else?
Another question. Is there ever really fog?
On the ward itself?
Yeah.
No reason to think so. Outside? Yes. Saturday.
Because it started the day cold and icy. And
Felt like cheap on Saturday.
and it was 60.
6 foot late that day. Yeah. And this came in. I don't know if that one all happened.
It's a movie reference.
Yeah, chief.
That's
What
why-
else?
Yeah.
Who is the oppressive force, or who are the oppressive force, or what is the oppressive force? You know, since it's going to be forcing people to be alienated. Staff, so like staff, nurse,
Nurses, aides,
okay.
doctor.
What other entity? Then this, I would say, would be where the fog kind of comes in from Chief's perspective. Okay.
They never went into more detail.
You wish they went into more detail.
Yeah, they just kind of left it.
And like in the movie version, the combine never really comes up because it's hard to do it from a third-person objective point of view. So it's much more nurse, you know, Ratchet, bad guy,
Yeah.
bad gal. Anything else? Alienation, conformity, pressures.
Seems like if you don't behave the way they want you to, they just lobotomize you.
Okay, so the punishments that kind of take place, lobotomies, and this would kind of go along with Ellis as well. You know, that he's kind of becomes a showpiece, so literally wall decoration, lobotomy, EST. If you feel, and this is an extreme, if you really feel alienated, they might not do it to you, but what happens? They might not do it to you directly. I didn't hear what you said. Disturbed, I'm even thinking a step further. Yeah, suicide. You know, you have Bibbett, Cheswick, those folks. Any, kind of shifting gears a little bit, any moments where the alienation goes away, or the conformity, the social pressure goes away? The boat, okay. So, kind of like the opposite of this would be the fishing trip. Anything else? So there's one other kind of obvious thing at the end. Party. I'm even thinking about something after that, but that would still work. They leave. Yeah, patients leave. So again, we're dealing with an imaginary prompt right now because we just have the whole idea about alienation, you know, that Selena was bringing up. But we okay with understand at least how these examples tie in with that concept. Now comes the tricky part. All right, from a rhetorical analysis standpoint, what devices do you start to see taking shape with any of those examples? Doesn't mean it links all the examples together by any means, but if you look at the, I think we have 6 up here, you could even argue more for some of them that are on the list. What devices do you start to see?
Would motif be one?
Yeah,
Since
it could be.
alienation comes up so much.
Since the
Alienation comes up so much.
like the motif of alienation, you could. I'd be careful, and it's going to kind of depend on the wording of the prompt. That I wouldn't want to completely repeat that idea, like repeat the word from the prompt, because it's almost going to seem like alienation is supported in the book through these examples of alienation. So that kind of becomes a little bit dangerous. I would say, though, that idea of motif, yes, absolutely, we do have examples. I think we have one that's like really pretty explicitly stated in green. You certainly have this whole idea of the fog coming up quite a bit. So yes, you could certainly go with that whole motif taking place. For the fog? Sure, and that's something to keep in mind, depending on, bless you, depending on the way that you're looking at something so far as the examples, what part you want to highlight, it could determine whether you're going to look at something as being imagery, motif. I think we mentioned this yesterday. By definition, what does a motif do in the book? It's going to keep coming up over and over and over again. So if one aspect that you want to look at is the fact that Chief really feels alienated throughout much of the book, and a way to really tell this is because he keeps entering the fog and feeling safe in it, you're looking really at the impact of it being there multiple times, the motif qualities. If you want to focus on a time that he's really describing how he feels safe, and you're more worried about you mentioning, like, is it a real thing or not? And you're kind of going into the whole impact that the Combine has in relation to the fog, then that might be a little bit more imagery. So you really kind of have to make a decision as to which way am I going to go with it. It might also depend on other examples that you use. For, literally going along with that line with the imagery, the pecking party and the passage that we were looking at yesterday, what was one of the devices that we were really looking at? With the fact that we had hens, goose, rabbit, wolves, you had animal imagery taking place. If you wanted to go into detail about the pecking party as well as the fog, I'm probably putting my imagery over here, and then when it comes to the fog, that's when I would go motif. So I'm not reusing the same device over and over and over again. So there's a lot of factors, variables that can go into it. What else? Doesn't have to be motif related, but what else do you see device-wise? And it even could be for some of the things we've already identified.
Illusion.
Where?
ESP.
How come?
Table. Table. And you can tie that in with like illusion to all the other characters.
Why would that work with, and I'm not arguing, looking for clarification, why would that work with alienation? And it would.
I would.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Then I just got lucky there because I couldn't tell you.
Didn't you say that, like, it would be like physical growth, like, illusions, I guess, because the shooting thing, I don't but I know, like, Alice, like, how he's up on, like, I don't know, like,
Nailed to the wall.
yeah,
The table is
it's in a cross, yeah.
Okay, so we got cross-shaped. Amanda?
Well, at the end, towards the end, he like willingly got on the table for shock therapy, and Jesus like willingly like went on the cross.
And McMurphy even says the other thing about, where's my crown? Like, am I going to give you a crown of thorns and all that kind of stuff? When you look at this, and again, I know people have varying degrees of comfort, when it comes to biblical references, and you are under no pressure to use illusion whatsoever. But from the Christian point of view, what's the purpose of the crucifixion? What does it do? Not for Jesus, but for others, saves them. What does McMurphy in some way save the other patients from? The tyranny, the alienation, because after his death, what do? They leave. So you could certainly look at that sacrifice aspect, Noah, that you're mentioning with like illusion, as to how, okay, he recognizes, or symbolically Kesey has him kind of being the savior for these alienated people. What does he do? He gives them the strength to actually get up and leave. What is surprising about the fact that the characters leave? Those who can. And those who do. Why does that come as a little bit of a, didn't see that happening? So what happened to them?
They gained the confidence in themselves. They didn't feel the social pressure anymore.
Yeah, and nothing wrong with that answer whatsoever. In simplistic terms, they thinking CH. They churched. No. They choked. No.
Cross-hyphenated.
They CH. Somebody said it.
Oh, I think it was two words.
I think someone said it.
Change.
They changed.
I thought you were looking for two
Yeah.
words.
What are they from a literary standpoint if the characters changed? That you have now dynamic characters.
Wow. This is a 9.
Yeah, tie in.
Maybe a 9.
What is Ellis? If you go against this power, you could end up. It's kind of a what for McMurphy and some of the others. Now that you know how everything within the book plays out. But he's one of the first characters that you actually see, and people read it and go, what in the world is going on here? You walk into a building, into a hospital, you see a guy nailed to the wall or stuck to the wall. What's your first thought?
This place is crazy.
Uh-oh. Does that end up being true?
Idea.
Yeah, I wouldn't say kind of. Yeah, this place is nuts. It's basically a what of what's to come. Yeah, it's a warning. You know, you could argue that there's foreshadowing that alienation is a big concern throughout the course of this text, and so you need some kind of hero to bring you about. Hey, what do you know? You got that whole illusion idea going on. The Combine in itself, you know, people look at it being the oppressive force. What did we say early on? The Combine probably is representative of the man, the power, the establishment within a nation. That's probably going to be the government. What's the message then if the Combine or the government is alienating people who are different or putting them into hospitals like this? So discrimination, if you don't fit a certain mold, something's wrong with you, we're going to kick you out. So the Combine becomes what of government? I think someone said it. Symbolic. You know, symbolism. Depending, you know, again, you were talking about imagery before. Depending what you want to do, maybe you're going into the fog and you want to get into some of the machine imagery of the Combine. You know, therefore you might go motif with fog imagery with Combine. We'll move on to another one, but the whole fact that Alexis, I think, mentioned the pecking party, the logbook, the therapy sessions. What kind of therapy takes place in the therapeutic meetings? None is the honest answer. If you're in a hospital to get help, you're not getting any help. I find that to be rather unfortunate and ironic. Ooh, apparently that's like really big irony there in highlighter.
If someone walked into this classroom right now and saw this writing on the board, they'd think we were.
They would go,
Yeah,
wow, these people are awesome.
It'd be like, that's like a brain tornado.
We're talking about crosses and
Arrows.
animal
circles.
imagery.
The irony is they would think we're nuts and we're reading a book about being nuts.
And we are nuts.
That's nuts.
You want some trail mix with peanuts? We could eat some nuts.
I'm alright.
Yeah,
So,
That's the other good
no
part.
raisins.
what we did, and again, this doesn't mean you're getting an alienation prompt, maybe you will, but the thought process is, okay, identify the theme, start to come up with examples. Now, looking at those examples, which devices can I work? Again, you're not going into all of that stuff because you're going to be doing like 2-3 devices at most. You want to try to get as many examples of those devices as you can, but you're able now to kind of see how various devices start to fit in. I mean, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 maybe up there at this point, and we're looking for 2 or 3.
3, 4, 5. Yeah, 8.
Any other ones that you look at and go,
The human dignity.
that's been a common one. The nice thing about the human dignity after us doing the alienation is I would say there's a lot of carry over with them. And not saying therefore we don't need to do this one, but what does it basically mean to have human dignity? Or to have, what's it mean to have dignity? Let's put it that way. Start there first. Respect for yourself, morals. So, you know, earlier in the day I asked the question, give a character who has dignity. Someone raised the hand. First answer was Nurse Ratched. And she does, because she thinks that she is confident in herself, dignified. Are the things that she does dignify towards other people? And then they're going, well, no. You know, so there's certainly some variance to the way that you might want to look at characters and whatnot. You could claim that someone has dignity, but if you're looking at a way that lack of dignity is portrayed, she still might be kind of an option with it. So what are examples, same thing, where you would say characters certainly have that dignity, or that dignity is absent from them?
Locations compared themselves to rabbits. They didn't have the confidence of the human dignity that people in the outside world had.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. What else? How come?
I don't think a person who's self-confident and shy would walk into a hospital and run up and shook everybody.
Who's the most bull goose loony person here, kind of thing? Okay.
I don't think anybody is.
You'd probably be a little bit more passive in your approach, and he's integrating himself very well. Where the fight takes place. That'd be good.
Even after that, when Chief was talking about when he comes back hurt, but he was still going to stay standing because of how hurt he was. I think that's keeping his pride up.
Mm-hmm.
Give in.
So like Chief's new pride, and kind of going. I mean, I know this isn't the same example, but so far as Chief, what change does he see in himself? Kind of going along with his pride, but size, yeah. Alexis, do you have another?
No, I was gonna so you can use dynamic characters like again here because they change from
Sure. Because, and keep in mind, you're writing one essay. So, I mean, we put a whole bunch of devices up here. A lot of those devices certainly would be appropriate here. So you, really gets dizzy. So since we mentioned Chief's new pride, yeah, that would certainly give you the ability to look at him as being a dynamic character. Now keep in mind, if you're going to go that someone is a dynamic character, you do have to illustrate how that change has occurred. You can't just go dynamic character because he found pride. You know, what was an example before when he didn't versus what's an example when he does now. Also along, you know, in that same vein, mentioned how does he know he's changing? Well, reference to size, what could we certainly do with size so far as device? Well, but rhetorical device, rhetorically speaking, because size keeps getting referenced over and over and over, you know, you got motif. When it comes to size and the motif of size, you know, certainly Chief, McMurphy, and who else would we want to include? Because you do get kind of like change in size or presence. What's her name, according to Chief? Big Nurse, you know, so certainly Big Nurse would be a way in which you could mention, illustrate the idea that size is a motif throughout, and now how Chief finds his own dignity is as he gets larger, bigger, you know, putting on McMurphy's hat, those kinds of things. The fight in the shower, what is so poignant, powerful about that fight? Like, would that fight have happened 2 months ago?
No.
Why not?
McMurphy will be too.
McMurphy wasn't there. They didn't have the human dignity, you know, at that point. And the nice thing about the fight in the shower is McMurphy's not fighting for himself. Chief's not fighting for himself. They are fighting for, not
Or not,
Billy.
or not Billy, George.
They're fighting for George, so they are worried about one another. I'm thinking of a more abstract term, but the fact that, and you could say something like irony, but I'm thinking of something maybe a little bit more poignant, but comparing this to earlier scenes. The contrast of those two scenes really speaks volumes. So the juxtaposition of, like, what would be a good example? Because George we don't really know from before. But what would be a character that really does get oppressed, humiliated, time and time again, and no one really comes to his defense? I'm thinking of someone else. Billy, you could kind of argue. Billy does a little bit of a, with the end, but similar, Cheswick. You know, that's a huge juxtaposition as to what happens with Cheswick versus what happens with George. You know, the whole rabbit comparison, you know, the dehumanization, the animal imagery. You know, if you are being dehumanized, and the fact that Harding's even the one who brings it up, he doesn't, you know, we're not even humans, we're animals. That certainly kind of speaks volumes from that rhetorical standpoint. So you got those themes, look over them, think about examples, some devices that go along with them. You should be in pretty good shape. My life.